The third cup of coffee had grown cold on my side of the table, but nobody seemed inclined to notice. Not my father, leafing through my clippings with a crooked frown, nor my mother, arms folded and lips set. Not even my brother Jinho, slouched in his chair, quietly scrolling his phone, but I caught him glancing up, eager for the show to get mean. The studio was small, clean, and bright, the late afternoon sun pressed hard against the windows. That brightness made every floor of the room show: unpaid bills on the countertop, the cracked corner of the old Samsung TV, my stack of articles in a cheap blue binder. Father spoke first, as always. "You plan on becoming a journalist, you say, not law, not medicine, certainly not business." His tone made the word sound like a sneeze. "We have real problems here, Hana," my mother chimed in, a tiny twitch in her cheek. "Your appa works 11 hours a day. I cook, clean. Do you see me playing around with words?" My brother snorted, didn't look up from the phone. "Maybe you'll write about stars, get famous on Instagram." The sarcasm came easy to him. He used to be on my side when we played soccer on the roof as kids. Now, at 19, he had grown sharper, immune to embarrassment. I tried to keep my back straight, tried to control my voice. "I just want the chance. My professors at Sukmyung say." Mother broke in, "Professors don't pay rent, Hana. You want to write, go write a real paycheck, then come home." My father was silent for a moment, his eyes on my hands, my old bitten nails. "You're dreaming, Hana," he said softly, but the softness hurt more. "People like us don't get to dream much." The room went thick and sticky, everyone looking everywhere but at me. Outside, an ajama shouted about strawberries in the alley, and I wished I could melt into the city noise. I left then, paper binder under my arm, shoes barely making a sound. Behind the closed door, I could still hear my brother's voice. "She'll be back before rent's due." On the bus, wedged between a suit-wearing office worker and a grandmother dragging grocery bags, the city looked like it was moving away from me in slow motion. Seoul had always felt relentless, but that evening, the neon lights and the endless concrete reminded me how easy it is to vanish in the brightness. The first year was a series of small humiliations. Freelance gigs that didn't pay, stories buried at the end of web pages, editors who called me kid and forgot my name. Seoul's winter was particularly thin and hard. My tiny apartment in Itaewon filled with the smell of boiled cabbage and laundry left to dry. I learned to sleep in bursts, my mind always worrying, what's the angle, what'll get me noticed, what's next? During the day, I wore the same navy coat everywhere, trying to look older, reliable. Nights, I drank instant coffee and stared at the city from my tiny window, the ghost of my family's voices louder in the dark. "You're ridiculous, Hana, people like us." I started taking notes in every konbini, every subway ride, hunting for scraps. Once, chasing rumors of corruption in local housing flats, I spent 2 days eating kimbap triangles and following a nervous middle manager as he traipsed between city offices. He finally turned, sweating, and said, "Stop pretending, little girl, this isn't a job for you." He laughed as he said it, flakes of pastry falling from his mouth. That night I teetered on the edge of giving up, stood in my kitchen until the fridge light buzzed off. I remembered my mother's kitchen, the way she'd always be humming, even when tired. I remembered her hands stained from spinach, knuckles cracked but graceful. For some reason, that memory made me angrier, steadier. I kept going. By my third year, I had moved across the river. My address was still unimpressive, a rectangle with room for a single mattress, but now my bylines had begun to appear, places that people in the newsroom nodded at. A fact check here, a minor scandal there, and then a stroke of luck. A tip from an old college friend led me to a story about a politician laundering campaign funds through a chain of karaoke rooms. I staked out the karaoke until dawn, living on vending machine coffee and cheap gimbap, watching men in suits slip in and out with heavy briefcases. I wrote the story over a feverish weekend, my fingers shaking as I emailed my editor. The story was published front page. There was a photograph taken on a grainy security camera with my byline below, a small black font but mine. People started to call me not kid, but Reporter Kang. Nobody from home reached out. 4 years had passed. I often found myself staring at my phone, thumb lingering on family group texts stacked with unread messages, Jinho's selfies at his military base, my mother's evangelist video shares. I wanted to tell them things, but all the old shames came rushing. I was still ridiculous in their world, their Hana who rushed headlong at impossible things, but I kept working. Built up the kind of network that let me chase bigger stories, unlicensed clinics, illegal loan sharking in the high-rises, the dark side of Korea's gig economy. I learned to navigate police stations with a tight smile and held a recorder in the faces of men who'd rather spit than talk. One evening, after a long day tracking a fugitive police officer down an alley in Gangnam, I ran into an old college friend Minji at a Pojangmatcha stand. She grinned, ramen in hand. Saw your name on YTN, Kang. Not bad for a dreamer. We clinked glasses, comforted by the steam and the sake, the memory of who I used to be and who I was becoming. Still, success is slipperier than people think. Some days it was just long commutes, a clogged inbox, the feeling that nobody really listens, nobody really knows. But then came the call that changed everything. An anonymous tip about falsified safety reports at a major subway tunnel expansion. An old man's voice trembling. They're skipping inspections, miss, people are going to die, please. Do something, the voice lingered in my head, reminding me of my own grandfather, dead before I could learn to ask him things that mattered. I staked out construction sites, chased paper trails. I interviewed guards, workers, and supervisors, enduring dismissive jeers, cold shoulders, even rocks thrown near my parked car. One night, a thug warned me to stop poking around. I didn't. I broke the story in a 3-part series, photos and video clips, eyewitnesses on record, evidence piling up. It made national news. Within days, the subway company's director was fired. Politicians spoke in shame. People told me you saved lives, Miss Kang. My email filled up, job offers, TV interviews. Strangers bowed to me on the street. A TV anchor called me the bravest journalist of her generation. That night, as the city glimmered outside my window, I sat alone on my mattress and sobbed, grief tangled with relief, victory with the familiar ache for someone to share it with. I called home, nobody answered, so the next Sunday I took the train back to Marpo. The old station hadn't changed, pigeons pecked at the stone, banners flapped between lamp posts, Ajamas hawked fish cakes from steaming carts. My parents' building with its chipped blue doors and the handwritten resident notes looked smaller. I climbed the narrow stairs, my heart thudding against my ribs, envy and hope swirling. The family was home. My mother opened the door in her house slippers, eyes wide, then narrowed. "You're here," she said, as though I were a stray cat. "Hi, Uma." Father glanced up from the living room, cautiously folding the newspaper. My brother was visiting, lounging on the battered sofa, looking older, muscle under his shirt, hair cropped short from the army. They didn't leap up, they didn't scold. For a moment, nobody seemed to know what to do. I placed the fruit I brought on the table, clear, careful gestures. The routines had not left me. Uma fussed with the fruit. "You're too thin," she said finally, voice softer than before. She didn't meet my eyes. Appa cleared his throat. "We watched the news," he said quietly. "We saw your picture at the press conference with the minister." My hands trembled. "I thought maybe you'd want to come see something today. I'm being awarded at the government building. The mayor is presenting me with an honor. There's a ceremony. It would mean something if you came." Jinho grunted. "You're on TV now, Hana." I nodded, unsure if it sounded like pride or apology. "I guess I am." There was a heavy pause. Then my mother, folding her hands, said, "We'll come. Your father is off this week." The 4 of us sat in silent agreement, steam curling from the rice cooker, traffic humming outside. I kept my chin up, dignity and hope mingling in my chest. The government hall was larger than my old university gymnasium. Its marble floors were mirrored and cold, and the nervous energy from the chattering crowd echoed off the high ceiling. A crisp banner behind the stage read, "Award for Civic Courage, presented by the Mayor of Seoul." I guided my family through the lobby, my mother clutching her old purse, my father looking lost in his borrowed suit. From the corridor, we heard the distant trill of the national anthem. I kept glancing at them, afraid they'd turn and slip away as they used to when I read them something I'd written as a girl. But they followed, heads high, silent and observant. We sat in the reserved seats. My editors waved, grinning, one even winked. Mother's jaw tightened, but when the master of ceremonies called my name, she reached over and squeezed my hand. Something in that grip, an apology maybe or simple awe, brought a heat behind my eyes. I walked to the stage, blinding camera flashes catching every step. The mayor in his sharp suit smiled and handed me the plaque. My name engraved, the ministry's gold seal glimmering. The applause rose to the bright beams above. I searched the crowd for my family, saw my father's taut face, brimming with bewildered pride, my mother's trembling jaw, my brother's steady gaze. The mayor asked for a word. I gripped the microphone, searching for words, resisting the urge to crumble. I was taught that dreams are for people with money, with connections. But I learned here in Seoul that sometimes the world needs ordinary people who refuse to look away. This honor isn't just mine, it belongs to everyone who believed the truth could matter, even if it sometimes meant being alone. A hush fell, my mother wept silently, my father nodded chin up, Jinho clapped while refusing to smile, cameras flashed, my hands stopped shaking. After the ceremony, my family followed me to the lobby where a cluster of editors and city officials milled about, shaking hands. My mother clutched my arm, watching as women in brooches and older men in polished shoes stopped to bow to congratulate me. Someone leaned over to my parents and whispered, "Your daughter is extraordinary, you must be so proud." My father, standing taller than I'd ever seen, replied quietly, "Yes. We are." For the first time, my mother touched the award plaque, traced my name with her thumb. She didn't say much, just "You did well, Hania," but her eyes shone. We walked together across the square, the city lights catching in every window, mixing with the sunset that pooled over the Han River. Later at home, over tteokguk that my mother insisted on making from scratch, the mood grew lighter. Jinho asked if my stories ever got me into real trouble. I laughed, yes, sometimes. Even my father, stoic as ever, managed a story about his own youth, hitchhiking south during the IMF crisis, hungry and reckless. My mother listened, then reached for my hand. "Hana, you've always been stubborn. Maybe that's the only real way to live." I smiled, the taste of broth and victory mixing in my mouth, the weight of loneliness finally easing. I looked around, the cracks in the TV, the stack of old letters behind the radio, the city night running wild outside, and felt for the first time in a long time that I had come home not as the girl who left, but as someone remade by struggle and grit. No less wounded, but now woven with dignity. Seoul shimmered below, relentless and bright, but tonight it felt like a city that could belong to me. My laughter mingled with my family's, rising, interrupted only by the far-off call of an Ajama hawking strawberries in the alley.